All right, so we have talked a lot about metrics through the last couple of days. And my intent here is to kind of help you put it all together, give you some information about how to make it all work, right? So we're going to start off with, first of all, metrics or it didn't happen. You guys have heard this, right? We have these great things, but we're not measuring them. And then our management says, okay, great, but what are you doing? We go, we're doing these great things, right? But why? What does it mean? So what? So typically we have a couple of reasons that we measure. Most of us have at least some kind of compliance and reporting measurement because we have to. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you have more than 3 people in your organization, you probably have to report metrics to somebody. We also want to try to justify our existence. Especially in the awareness space, we're always fighting for more information, for more resources, for more money, for more of what we need to do what we need to do. We also need to measure for the effectiveness of program activities. And some of these are easier than others. Almost everybody in here who has a phishing program has probably some metrics on it. That's the easy ones. Those are the low-hanging fruit. But there's a lot more that we need to be measuring than just phishing. And that final bullet is what you've been hearing from most of our speakers across the last day and a half. We have to measure the reduction in human risk. That's how we need to start quantifying ourselves. We have to shift to that. That's what we do to survive. And that's what we do. That is our job. So here's some typical things that we measure. Success and failure of phishing, reporting, security incidents and breaches, interactions with program activities and messaging. And how do we measure them? And here's the key. Most of us start with counting. I'm here to challenge you to move from counting to measuring human behavior change and risk reduction. So it takes a shift. So I'm going to start a little bit with Data Analytics 101, because that's really important. And when I work with people who are trying to bring their programs to the next level, bring their established awareness programs up to full maturity, one of the biggest places they struggle with is their metrics. And part of that is, as we've heard in some of the other presentations today and yesterday, we have to know why. We have to know what questions we're asking. And then you also have to know if your data can answer those questions. So Data Analytics 101. Data analytics is the process of examining data sets in order to find trends and draw conclusions about the information they contain. That's the point of metrics. You have to learn to ask the right questions of data to get the answers you need. You have to learn what data can reasonably answer your questions. And the final point there, metrics have little value without good analytics. You don't have good analytics, all you have are spreadsheets. You have numbers that don't tell you anything. So what do we need to ask? Most metrics package, as I've said, focus on compliance and reporting to external shareholders. You have metrics you report to your board, to your leadership, to the governing bodies that you report to. But there's also a set that most programs are missing, and that's the internal metrics. What data do you need to make sure that your program is as effective as it can be, is tuned to the constantly shifting needs of your organization and the threat landscape, and is as efficient as possible? So that last question there, how can you adjust your program and keep it relevant without that data? So the next piece is absolutely critical. When I went to grad school, started in grad school, one of the first things they taught us was research design and statistics. And the thing with statistics is you can make a statistic say anything you want, right? You can skew it. But then you have useless data. It's junk data, doesn't do you any good. So you have to think about this data that I'm collecting. Even if I could run it through a stats program and get a statistic from it, is it reasonable that this data set can answer that question? If I want to know what is the greatest weakness for my organization in North America, and I'm asking it of a data set that doesn't have geographic information, how can I possibly have that data? How can I possibly get that information? I can get a statistic, but it's junk, right? So that's one of your big things. Also, how reliable is your data? How clean is it? Does it have a lot of erroneous information in it? Doesn't mean you can't use it. It means you have to account for it. And then finally, what is the cost of obtaining this data? Time, money, and effort. Because we may go into a program, a part of our program, and go, this is going to change the world and it's going to be fantastic. And we can measure it. It's only going to take the CSOC, 3 weeks of every month to compile the data for us. That ain't going to work, right? So we've talked a little bit about what you need to know about, what you need to think about when you're starting to figure out what metrics you want. The bulk of my talk here is to present a model that I use in my programs. I use it with my clients. It's very, very effective. It's been around forever. Show of hands, how many of you ever heard of the Kirkpatrick model? There's a few of you. Yay! So I'm going to show you, we're going to start with a video that gives you just a little quick overview of the Kirkpatrick model, and then I'll break it down for you. Where'd it go? There we go. All right, so that's Kirkpatrick in a nutshell. Let's break it down. So here's the beautiful thing. It's 4 levels. 2 of them are internal, 2 of them are more external facing, but you can pull data from all of them. So first things first, I gave you the kind of the so what piece on the right there. Do they like it? Did they learn from it? Did they change how they work? And how much did it reduce human-based risk, that level 4 impact? So first of all, a couple of things to know about Kirkpatrick. Those levels look hierarchical, but they're not. They're independent levels. And here is the most beautiful thing about that. When you are starting off, if any of you are measuring anything on your program, you are probably measuring level 1 and maybe level 2, some things in there, right? So you can continue doing that. You can, let's say you really need to pull some of those risk reduction things together for your board, you can jump straight to 4 without going through 3. So they are cumulative in that if you have data for 1, 2, you can pull it up through the levels, but they're not, you don't have to do them all in order. Okay. The reason I did the inverted pyramid is that's kind of where your view is. Level 4 is 10,000 feet. You're looking at the organization as a whole. 3 is a little closer in, 2 is a little closer in. 1, you're looking at the individual person. The other beautiful thing is that this allows for phased implementation. I've done this with a couple of clients now, where we give them the full package and they kind of look at me and go, oh my God, I can't do all that. Well, of course not. You're going to do this over the next 3 to 5 years. You're going to start with these pieces and then you're going to add each year. So first off, level 1, gathering reactions and feedback from individual participants, smile sheets. How many of you have participant feedback surveys? Yep. So there's your level 1 metric. There's one of them, right? So you get some good information from that. You don't get a whole lot of great broad information, but you do get some information from that. The problem is that's where a lot of program metrics stop. They'll do that, and then maybe some phishing simulation reporting and click rates. So in this level, we're looking at things like participant feedback surveys, like I said, smile sheets, customer satisfaction surveys, event attendance, those types of things. Here's the key. Analysis recommendations. So what do you do with this data? This is one of the most important pieces of what we do with the people that we help with on this. How do you look at this data? So you're looking at level 1, you're looking at what's popular, what's resonating, not necessarily what's causing change at this point, but as people have said before, if people aren't listening, you can't get your message across, right? So this will help you figure out what people are listening to, what they at least like, what's approachable. And then we move to level 2, and this is where we start looking at assessing what they're actually learning. So now we know they're attending things, they're completing training, they're doing different things. But what are they working with? What are they learning? So this gives you the information about the effectiveness and popularity of individual learning activities. So this might look like one of the sessions earlier was talking about the 20 modules that were voluntary. People could come in and take those training modules. So that would be a level 2. How many people completed those modules? They also help identify awareness topics that are strengths or weaknesses for the organization or specific audiences within. So in that example, if they go and look at, let's say there are quizzes in those 20 modules, and they go and they look at a particular team and find that everybody on the team is missing quiz questions about a particular topic. Well, now you know that team needs extra work on that topic. May not be training, but you know that they're not getting it in some way. One misperception is that training completions measure learning. They don't, not really. They're an easy way to kind of get some basic information here, but in order to really see what people are learning and applying, you kind of have to take it to the next level. So here's some example metrics for this level. Like I've said, questions being asked of the awareness team also, either in person or via email, chat, look for that. And look for anything, any kind of themes that you're seeing in that. A lot of times that's a good way to get feedback. If you have a champion network, listen to them, ask them what they're hearing, the questions that they're hearing. And as I've said here, again, you're looking at, for example, if you're pulling quiz questions, which ones are they getting most often wrong? Which ones are they getting most often right? You've got a quiz question, a set of quiz questions that everybody in the org is getting right. You don't really need to spend a lot of time training on that anymore. Okay, so now we start moving up into the harder ones. This is where you get the most bang for your buck, but it's a lot harder for you to figure out how to get this data. Here is where those relationships come in, we've been talking about. One of the most beautiful things about cybersecurity is we measure everything. If your organization has a cybersecurity posture of any kind, they are measuring things. They're recording things. They're logging things. You need to become very good friends with the people who do those types of logging, because you can pull a tremendous amount of information out of the data that they're already generating. And that's where your level 3 and 4 metrics come in. The first program I ever built, the second metric there, was something that surprised the heck out of us. We rolled the program out, and all of a sudden we get calls from the people who are running the ethics and compliance hotline. Like, man, our switchboard is lighting up. What did you people do? And we find out that the things that they're reporting are all of the things that we're teaching, which was a good thing because it meant people were actually aware of it. And then we did see the numbers start to drop again after people started learning what they needed to do. But think outside the box on this. This is where knowing what questions to ask and being able to evaluate your data come in super handy, right? That's critical in these two layers. The other thing too is when you start looking at level 3 and level 4 behavior, when you're doing your analysis, you're not looking at single metrics anymore. You're looking for trends. You're looking at data points that corroborate each other. You're looking at things together to try to figure out, like if you get a trend, all right, let's say your real phishing click rate dropped dramatically this quarter. That's terrific. Except that you also then look at what was being blocked by the firewall and you realize that almost nothing got through this quarter. Well, okay. So what caused that trend? Was it you or the firewall? Right? So you have to start looking at context for your data at these levels. The last two here I like for the data analysis. Does event attendance correlate with click rate trends, reporting rate trends, and phishing corrective actions results? So you see a group that attends everything you throw out there. Like their manager is really on it. What's their click rate? What's their reporting rate? If you have a phishing corrective actions program, how many in that team are actually getting put in that program? Right? So you look at your actual effectiveness. Because if they're attending everything that you are doing and they're still clicking and they're still in the corrective action, then your program is not meeting their needs and you need to tune it. Year-over-year analysis is super critical as well. Obviously, you don't have that year one, but these are the pieces that you roll out as you have this data. And then the pièce de résistance, impact or results, level 4. This is what your board wants. This is what your CISO wants. This is what your leadership wants. This is the stuff where you can go and say, hey, we did this thing. We did all this great stuff. It wasn't entertainment. It reduced our risk, and this is how. So this is the 10,000-foot view. This is the top. You're looking for behavior change, right? You're literally looking for behavior change. Are we becoming a more secure organization as a result of security awareness efforts and improved security culture? That is your answer. That's your question that you're trying to ask your level 4 data. So there are a lot that you can do here. These are just some examples that a lot of organizations have. Depends on what level of sophistication you have with your overall security posture, what kinds of data is available. But I guarantee you, your CSOC is measuring this. They're measuring it for their own uses. So you have to figure out which pieces of what they're measuring are tied to human behavior. And that's the key. This is one of the most important aspects of data analysis. One of the most important aspects of data analysis at level 4 is understanding what is causing the trends that appear in these metrics. You have to be careful on this one. Because again, what we said earlier about statistics can be made to say anything. This is where you need to know. You need to know your data. You need to know that it's accurate. And you need to make sure that it can actually answer your questions. This requires a solid understanding of the context surrounding your data. This is where you get to be good friends with whoever's doing the data analysis or the analytics for your CSOC team. You should already be on good friends with them anyways, because they can give you a lot of help for a lot of the rest of your program. But for this talk, let's just focus on what they can help you with metrics. Okay, group time. All right, so I'm going to give you just a few minutes, maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. I want you to work within your teams. Those of you who are virtual, you can do this in Slack. Think about how you are currently measuring your programs. Think about the metrics that you currently have. What levels are they? And then I want you to work together and brainstorm 1 to 2 metrics for each of the 4 levels within your program. When we're done, we're going to share. Go. All right, you guys right here. You're right in the front. What did you think about, first of all, how are you currently measuring your programs?
In our program, we're currently tracking the phishing report rate, reporting rate itself by using the fish alert button, and actual a rate versus in comparison with the industry. Also, like the repeat offenders, if it's decreasing, and also resiliency rate. So those are the ones right now that we're using.
What did you guys come up with for any of the higher levels? Were you able to come up with anything for 3 or 4, level 3 or 4? No. Okay. Does anybody? Okay, come over here. Because those are the hard ones.
We were talking about using the data we were getting as actionable intelligence and understanding what the efficacy of the data that we were getting, allowing us to further build out our understanding of how our people were behaving. So we take the real world phishing, simulation phishing, as well as the training and event data, and correlate that to behavior and say at an individual level, at a team, a department, then an industry-wide level or a corporate-wide level, how are they performing and where are the weak spots that we can begin to attack the knowledge base there.
Awesome, terrific. Okay. Who else has something that they would like to share on this? Anybody else come up with anything good over here? On level 4, level 3 or 4?
So one of the people on our team was saying that they are my team, yay team, that they did a shared objective with their purple team.
Okay.
And they were able to find the passwords, even though they were hashed, and they were able to crack them because the passwords weren't very complex. So they did a campaign to increase passwords. So they're going to do another, have to work with the purple team to do that again to see if they're more complex after the password.
And that's a beautiful level 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Level 3, you look at, behavior, have they changed their passwords? And then level 4, if they're no longer crackable, you can demonstrate reduction in risk right there. Very good.
Yeah.
I think we got time for maybe one more if anybody else has anything they'd like to share. Okay, well, let's move on. All right, so sum up. 4 levels, a beautiful model. It's simple, gives you some way to harness that madness, because you do have to kind of figure out which pieces are going to be useful for you. And this gives you an idea of how to pick those levels, right? Now you have these 4 levels to think about instead of just this giant pot of data. Helps you pick the most relevant data. It helps you be more effective, more focused. supports phased implementation. This is a beautiful thing. We did this for a large scale energy client a few years ago, and they were able to basically pick the things that were most critical for their board and their team right that moment, roll those in. The next year they added a couple more in. The next year they added a couple more in until they had a very robust practice. The other thing I will throw out there, and I am not going to give you any names of products, but there are products out there that are sort of like human sims that can make this a lot easier. And if you have this framework when you're setting one up, it makes it a lot easier for you to pick all those pieces together. Okay, we have a few minutes for questions. Before we get into questions, in a moment, I'm going to show you my contact screen. My business cards got lost in the mail somewhere. So I do not have business cards to give out, but if you'd like my contact information, take a picture of this. The slides will be available. If anybody would like to continue this conversation, reach out. This is my passion. When I went to grad school, they taught me how to research, and then it was all over after that.